Independent developers are the future of the industry, and they are undeniably doing fantastic right now. Repo is developed by a team of just 10 people, and that's surpassed 13 million copies sold. And even Schedule 1 has achieved impressive success with over 8 million copies sold in over a couple of months. And it just goes to show that people are sick and tired of the slop that the AAA companies are giving us, and we're looking towards indie developers to create new, unique, original content. And I luckily got a chance to sit down with Benjamin from Suzaku Games, talking about his time of being canceled, the state of modern gaming, and their upcoming release. I have a few different things to show off, but before I get into the topic, if you enjoy the content I create, check out the links in the description, join the community in my live streams, and consider supporting through Patreon or YouTube memberships. Now, I love getting a chance to sit down and talk with independent developers. I love to highlight their projects because I do believe they are the future of the industry. They're the ones that are giving us new, unique, fun, original content. And I've actually known Suzaku for a couple of years at this point. I'm a big fan of their games, and that's why I'm really happy to be able to sit down and talk with them. So this is actually a very long interview. Shout out to That Park Place for allowing me to post it on their site. I thought that was very, very cool of them. So you can read the entire thing. It will be linked down below, but because it is longer, I'm just going to get into the meat and potatoes of it. So in this interview, I got a chance to speak with Benjamin Widdowson from Suzaku, a studio founded by a husband and wife team I've known since their attempted and failed cancellation in 2019. So his name is Benjamin Widdowson, and he is the co-owner of Suzaku with his wife, Kay. In high school, he had three real hobbies: drawing, video games, and martial arts. He talks a little bit about his history and why he really got into video games and how he actually worked with Big Fish Games. And while there, he had worked on a ton of projects, most of which were released, but in total, 18 different titles. He learned a lot as a concept artist, game designer, and a writer there. In 2017, I was let go due to a lack of work and having a hard time finding the next job in the AAA industry. His wife, Kay, convinced him to take 6 months off and make his own game, which eventually turned into Sense, a cyberpunk ghost story, and they ended up kickstarting the game successfully, and then Kay became an official partner. Now, I actually had live streamed Sense, a cyberpunk ghost story all the way back, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I became acquainted with them because of their attempted and failed cancellation, but I actually like this game so much, I got the limited edition, like, physical version, which I think is really, really cool. I always have it on my shelf behind me, but it's a really good game. Most of their products are really fantastic. It says, though, the ethos of the studio from the beginning was the merger of East and West. Kay is from Hong Kong, and with me being American, it means we get to take inspiration from our unique backgrounds in culture, which I think is really cool. I love seeing people blend together different cultures and history and mythology and be able to create something that is still respectful, but something that is also still new and fresh and ultimately unique. He said, in an industry so often driven by market research and formulaic success, the idea of building a creative identity rooted in folklore, anime, and personal history feels increasingly rare. Many indie developers are doing what major studios once did, drawing from unique cultural and artistic perspectives rather than striving solely to hit quarterly targets, which is definitely a problem in the video game industry right now. I understand that at the end of the day, companies want to make money, but unfortunately, we do see time and time again, these companies decide to cancel projects that could have turned out to be really successful because they were so unique in order to just follow a formula that people are sick and tired of because it's been done so many times. So I asked, and we were talking about becoming acquainted back in 2021 when Sense, a cyberpunk ghost story angered a group of sensitive individuals on the internet. They were angered by its anime-inspired art style, which they believed perpetuated misogynistic and sexist ideas. The game's publisher, Top Hat Studios, issued a statement rejecting the censorship demands and said they categorically refused to force censorship upon Suzaku Games and said, "Our commitment to our audience and to developers is we will never infringe on creative freedom or expression." What was your initial reaction? What was that time like for you? Did such backlash ever cause you to reconsider making games? And he said, Sense hadn't been out that long, and if I recall, it was the holidays, so I had taken some time off with his wife to get away from the internet and build some gunpla. I actually didn't know about it until I think I saw your video or Yellow Flashes talking about it. I ran to the computer and saw messages and emails about it, and my heart sank. While we did not get much hate directly, other than a few nasty messages. I personally hate the term death threat because I don't really care what weird degenerates on the internet say, but they were explicitly wishing and threatening harm. By that time, Top Hat had already issued this statement and had yet to get around to informing me because they were so busy dealing with it. Now, I have supported Top Hat ever since. I thought that their response at the time was really phenomenal. They didn't back down, they didn't cave to demands, and they did defend this developer, which I think is really great. He said, though, my rule of thumb is when we got the initial round of hate during the Kickstarter, we were told to ignore them or professionally respond in the negative to their demands/comments, but if they mess with my ability to do business, hit back hard. I had no interest in being involved in the culture war, but I think the statements I've publicly made in the past, along with my friendly relationship with Dankula, make it pretty clear where I stand. I felt pretty bad about the guys at Top Hat getting the worst of the attacks and didn't really know what to do or say about it, especially because it was so out of nowhere. However, when I found out that another developer Top Hat was publishing faced a bit of harassment and some threats simply for being published by the same company, I was pretty gutted. I can take a fight and plenty of bullying just fine, but no one deserves to deal with that because of something I chose to do. Kay and I had talked about this prior to the event even happening because I'm pretty good at wargaming, and I kind of figured out by 2015 where we would be over the following years. She asked me if I wanted to be a commentator or a game developer, and I made my choice. And I personally think that they made the right choice because they do create really good experiences, and I have enjoyed them thoroughly. And I know so many other people have as well. And it's always so good to see people push for their passions. That's what they want to do. That's what they are focused on, and they never back down from that idea. Just a little bit of commentary on my part. She asked if I wanted to be a commentator or a game developer, and I made my choice. I'd rather just make games that help people escape, all in the same way that games helped me when I was a kid. That's what I love doing, making an escape. So when I found out that someone else was hit in the blast radius, it made me recommit to that a bit. I also had some very personal stuff going on around that time that I wasn't dealing with very well. So the stress and everything got to me pretty bad, and I ended up being effectively paralyzed and developed some pretty nasty social anxiety that took me until late 2023 to start finally pulling out of. Some may have noticed how bad I was at social media for a few years, and that of course really negatively impacted sales of my next titles and reach. Funny thing is, because I'm a man inching closer to 40 than I'd like, I didn't actually realize how bad I was doing with all that until I pulled out of it thanks to the people at my church and the local farmers market I get food at. And yeah, I mean, I am obviously a YouTuber, content creator, so I've had to learn kind of the ways of like marketing and how social media is ran, but I can imagine as an independent game developer, it is extremely tough to kind of market your games to so many different people and to get as many eyes as possible on it. That's why I like to use my platform as often as I can to highlight really fantastic and phenomenal games. So going forward, Suzaku is a game studio founded on the principle of creating pure escapism and entertainment. This is a quote straight from your website and a stance gamers believe more companies should embrace. It is a large reason so many people flock to independent studios who do not have to face pressure from large investors or execs, and it is because of execs that so many games end up being rushed to completion. Do you think the mainstream AAA industry has lost sight of their products being entertaining? And he says, yes, absolutely. I'm a gamer myself, so I always try to think in terms of the customer. Even when I have to make business decisions that I know aren't what I would want as a customer, I at least feel bad about it and try to avoid that at all costs. Now, he says, A, the corporate end is doing their job. They have to make money, more money than the last time they made money, and they have shareholders and investors who all have their own ideals and things they want to see done with their money. No one wants a stock to just stay stagnant. I recently spoke to someone about getting an investment, and I'm still weighing the option because it was clearly explained that an investor always wants something, whether it's ownership of the IP, a change in the direction, etc. So when you sign the contract, you have to be ready to accept the terms, but at the end of the day, it's always about making more money than you put in. And true, I completely understand this. Companies need to make money, and that is their primary focus. But over the past couple of years, we've seen a lot of companies actually kind of stray away from that. They are, in some cases, more worried about pushing a specific agenda and their personal brand of activism instead of just creating high quality entertainment. He goes on to say, though, the problem is the experts and analysts. These people forget that the customer is the key, the actual customer, not the hypothetical one they or some activist group they agree with promises exists if you just do X, Y, and Z. Hamburger stands should sell hamburgers to people who like hamburgers, which I totally agree with. B, it's not just executives. I hear this a lot. Those poor artists and coders just want to make fun games. A chunk of them do, and those people keep their head down and do their job as well as possible. I commend and have respect for them and fully understand why they do, but how often does the person who just wants to do their job well move up the ladder into a leadership position? How well can you truly do your job when you are terrified that the 16 bosses in multiple departments might fire you for the most insane reason you can imagine? The rot is deep. People who want power take power, and those types of people have agendas very often. This has always been a problem with any society since the dawn of time. At some point, the people in the industry on a massive scale became deeply ideological because the ones that weren't either shut their mouths or were fired and blacklisted, which is something I talk about so much on this channel. And it sucks because I want people to have all different sorts of opinions and be able to work in the industry. I want anybody to be able to create high quality entertainment, but some of them are just so ideologically driven that they can't see past their own opinion, and they believe they have to try to convince you why their opinion is correct, and then we get products like Dragon Age the Veilguard. I can attest personally that this was already the case in 2012, and I was already warning people. I knew that this was a problem. Political blacklists have been a thing since then, and if you didn't think it would get worse and lead to where we are today, then you were blind. It changes when the normies stand up as a group and then see people outside of the development end with an undue amount of influence and power were the only people that the power players in the studios were listening to. This is changing thanks to YouTube and alternative social media, which I think is great. The investors and execs aren't stupid. They just have their focus on their businesses. So when some part of the company is losing money and you have 30 people lying to you about why, who are you going to believe? The random person on Twitter saying gamer words or the 30 people you are paying to give you answers? I think that there does need to be some sort of like middle ground at this point, that companies do need to actually listen to their customers. But yeah, I mean, they hire analysts to analyze and to give them what they are believing is the best information that they could possibly gather. It says, though, do you think that with enough fan feedback they can ever reverse course? And he says, I'm sorry to say I'm very black-pilled about this. I do believe it will revert a little bit because money doesn't just talk, but a certain cartoon fox woman is probably banging the right drum. I would love to see EA, Activision, Ubisoft, and all these Western companies return to their roots and get back to making fun games that are games and not weird Hollywood bait. Instead of spending $400 million on the next Call of Duty, do what From Software just did and reuse assets to make $40 million games set in the COD universe with different gameplay types, stories, characters, etc. Why can't whoever owns the IP now take stuff from whatever military game they made recently and make Army of Two again? What if instead of giving a below mid ginger peach fuzz on her earlobes in the post-apocalypse for an extra $75 million, you have 30 of your employees make 4 small games over the course of 4 years using the assets from the game you spent $250 million on? And don't tell me it's because the gamer demands bigger and more cinematic games or we have to push the industry forward. You are pushing the industry into a hole like you have Goodbye Horses on repeat. The only thing the gamer demands is a good and fun game. Rule of cool rules all. Invest in indie studios and create studios with the ethos of indie devs. Look at Sandfall Interactive, who made Expedition 33. What do you notice? That is your way out of the hole. My email is public, which I love this statement so much because I do know that there are gamers out there who want bigger and more cinematic experiences, but generally that's not the case. We would rather have high quality experiences that are fun and are entertaining instead of the biggest, most expansive game you can make, because when you stretch yourself too thin, no matter how much money you have on the line, you're bound to run into roadblocks. It's like with Cyberpunk. They had hundreds of millions of dollars, years and years and years and years, and Cyberpunk 2077 came out, and even though they had 500 people working on that game, it was still bad because they stretched themselves too thin. Stop trying to make the biggest thing possible and make the best thing possible, the highest quality thing possible, the most rememberable experience you can. again. From there, I said there's a small yet vocal group of individuals on social media who believe that the over-sexualization of characters in video games is harmful. Your creations have even been accused of being inappropriate in the past, but there have been many games to release in the 2020s with a refocus on attractive character designs that have been extremely popular, like Stellar Blade, The First Ascendant, and AI Limit. And then I asked kind of his opinion on this. He said, I have mixed feelings about it, actually. I loved Stellar Blade, and my Christmas present this year was the new Dead or Alive Extreme game for PS5. I will never forgive the people who took Senran and Kagura away from me. I'm so happy to see fun, sexy games making a comeback as if they ever had to go away. At the same time, I am slightly butthurt about how much crap I got over making stuff like this since day one, especially since nothing I've made is anywhere near as aggressive as Stellar Blade or The First Descendant. Now that it is deemed safe and cool, I think you will see more sexy content in games across the board again. My butthurt is completely petty and fueled by jealousy, but thanks to these bigger teams with bigger names, I do hope it makes it easier to find investors and funding to be able to bring my games to the next level. And I think that this is also a really good point that I should probably be making more in my videos. When games like Stellar Blades and The First Descendants sell well, it means that there are more opportunities for creators who might make more risque content. Not everything has to be safe anymore. You can kind of push the limits a little bit more if it's proven that that's what people want. And then it ends up that investors and funding becomes available to creatives who also want to make content that might be deemed, a gooner bait, as we know the Access Media calls it. Budget and manpower is always the hang-up, since one was made by myself and one coder with Kay doing 3D assets. Kay and I made Midnight with one coder in about 20 months, not counting the post-launch update. With Goodnight Pan, Kay and I made it ourselves in 90 days. I coded the whole game myself, and she and I made everything except the animations and a handful of purchased assets. It's currently my highest rated game, and Death Harvest is deep in progress, but it's a bigger project thanks to me expanding the narrative scope and wanting to achieve something with it that would require significant funding. So that leads to Surangama. This is a very, very interesting looking game so far. He says that he is working his butt off on Surangama, my next game that I can finish in a short time frame with minimal budget. I am focused on a smaller in scope but polished and refined experience, kind of like Goodnight Pan was. However, because I am who God made me, I have also written and designed a larger version of the game that would require a bit of funding. So we are planning and preparing a Kickstarter campaign for the game that will launch with a demo build you will be able to play and give feedback on. July was their initial target, but it's looking a bit less likely day by day due to how much they're trying to achieve with their demo build, but they're burning as hard as possible. Luckily, I was able to bring a more experienced Unreal Engine developer named Reynaldo on board to help, and we are working very well together, which is a huge deal and a big help. And when this Kickstarter initially launches, guys, I will be covering it. We're going to have the team on the channel to talk about, their plans and the project, and it is looking really solid so far. It is a survival horror and character action mashup heavily inspired by Onimusha and Fatal Frame, but you will also see some Ninja Gaiden and Silent Hill influence as well. I'm trying to craft something unique with familiar parts, punishing, visceral, and fast-paced combat that pairs with the exploration and puzzle solving. This is not a Souls-like, it is a somewhat linear and level-based game that does not have leveling up or experience points. Growth will come from unlocking abilities, finding weapons, and mastering combat. Solve puzzles, fight enemies, navigate the winding maze-like corridors of the Tao Buddhist version of hell called Dayu, styled with a Kowloon walled city. Right now, we have nearly completed the forest leading to the Gates of Hell, which is where the demo begins. The Gates of Hell is an important location I will be able to show soon and will be the focus of the demo. And I just want to say that I am absolutely loving the character art right now. Of course, their art in the past has been really good, but man, oh man, do I love this one specific image right here. This is the type of a protagonist I want to see in a video game. It's intriguing, she's beautiful, and I just love the style. You will be able to play as a young security guard who gets physically dragged into hell by a vengeful spirit, and you must find out how and why you are stuck there as a living person and find a way home. So based on the ideals of the Surangama Sutras, known as the heroic march in Buddhism, as well as the traditional Cantonese lore of the afterlife, Surangama will take you on a deep and meaningful struggle through a vision of hell that the West has yet to see. I'm loving so much of this concept art that we were provided for this interview. He says, I don't want to show this off just yet, but the only things I would say are inspired by Souls games are the bosses, and he's working hard on the strongest designs he's ever made. You should expect epic boss enemies that tell their story in every movement in detail, but be warned, they are Hell's jailers for a reason. Other bosses will need to be characters capable of standing toe-to-toe with those jailers, so I hope I am setting your expectations high enough, and I'd say my expectations are pretty high now. I would love to be able to reach as close to the level of something like Stellar Blade in terms of content volume if we can get the game funded to a solid degree, but do have a shorter and more concise version that will work very well on its own at lower to zero funding. I've already shared a few unlockable costumes I've planned to make, and will be including the 3 that were in Goodnight Pan Pan, updated for a new character model, which is being made right now. The crowdfunding space remains one of the last true frontiers for unfiltered creative freedom in gaming. As platforms and publishers become more risk-adverse, projects like Surangama offer a direct line between the developer's vision and the player's support. If you're tired of safe, soulless titles, this is where new ideas are born. And I did end up asking if there was anything else they would like to say to players who love their experiences, and he finishes the interview off with, I cannot thank each and every one of you enough for your support over these last 7 years. I am so grateful that I've gotten to go on this journey and have the opportunity to try again and again to prove myself. I want to keep reaching higher, and thanks to you, I feel like I can finally hit the next level. If you keep following, or if you aren't yet, if you start following, I promise to take you on a one-of-a-kind escape. All of their social media will be linked in the description, but this is a phenomenal interview, and they're such a great set of people. I'm so glad that I've been able to get to know them over the past couple of years, and that they are still focused on making high-quality entertainment for their audience. So I definitely will be covering their game Surangama in the future. All of their social media will be linked down below, but this was a really great interview. Glad I got a chance to sit down and talk with Benjamin on their attempted cancellation, the state of the modern gaming industry, and their upcoming indie launch. But that's all that I really had to discuss in this video. Let everyone know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this, give it a like, and if you didn't, give it a dislike. I appreciate your support either way, but I'll talk to you all again in the next video really soon.